Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my Twitch channel. We are here for podcast number 3 of RLCS podcasts, and we are here for the week 2 review of the RLCS action both in the North American region and the European region at the weekend. Joining me on the desk for expert analysis is Mr. Mayday and Mr. Redeyes. Mayday, Redeyes, how are you doing?
You go first, Mayday. That's the order.
I'm doing it. I was about to say it, and then you cut me off. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good too.
Maybe we should do the podcast without Rob. Just talk about our game.
Okay, well, okay, and how are you doing? Okay. Right, so guys, let's get into it. There's some really good games at the weekend, some not so very good games, some really entertaining bad games, and some really entertaining good games, I think is the best way to describe it. But for everyone who's tuning in at the moment, I'm going to bring up the results screen here now for all of you guys. I believe at this moment you should be able to see the NA region right now, so let me know in the chat if you can indeed see that. And let's take it from the top then, I guess, guys. Made it Cloud9 versus Ghost, and it was a 3-2 win in the end for Cloud9. Ghost looked, I thought, excellent in this series. They were a completely different Ghost that played Evil Geniuses the week before, when it was just a defensive series, and I always felt like EG had the edge. I felt like Ghost could have won this game. What were your thoughts on it?
They played really well considering like the standard that they've been at, especially in the game against EG. Like they didn't have any chances to attack, but in this game they were seriously just in their face most of the time. And I think it's just the three players getting more comfortable with each other, allowing each other to play to their full potential. Rather than, something amazing happened overnight. They're just getting more comfortable playing together, playing better as a result.
Absolutely. And Redeyes, I tagged for you. Well, not tagged for you, but tagged for both of you. Lethamyr, I thought he played really well. What did you think? Did you feel Memory played well as well, or was it just a collective game for Ghost? How did you think they did against this really good Cloud9 team?
I think it's a collective effort. You're certainly never going to be 1v3 in Cloud9, but Laugh he definitely showed up today as opposed to the previous week there. Yeah, he had a better week, and I think it showed for the whole team.
Absolutely. And the only reason I'm bringing up that point is because I can't remember which one of you two mentioned it, but one of you two said, maybe it was me, I can't remember. One of us said last week that Lethamyr hasn't actually played well in a long time, so I just wanted to bring that point up. I thought Memory did really well also. Mayday, did you feel like that as well? I thought he was like really aggressive in the midfield, putting a lot of pressure on the likes of Torment and Gimmick in particular in midfield.
He did play really well. He's starting to show like why he was one of the most valuable players to pick up in the off season. Like if he's given the space to play his game, he can go up against the best of them and do extremely well. And starting to show his potential just in that series. Like I'd say he's still got a fair bit to go before he hits his ceiling, but for now that's a serious improvement. He's done really well.
Okay, and final point, Redeyes, to you. Was it Ghost playing really, really well and shutting down Cloud9, or were Cloud9 just warming up, or shall I dare say, disrespecting Ghost?
I think it's easy enough for Cloud9 to come into this series and think, all right, look at those last weeks of Ghost. I don't think we have to worry too much. And then Ghost comes out the gate really strong today, so I think it's a bit of a case of not C9 disrespecting, but just underestimating them, for sure. And I think Ghost really brought it a lot closer than C9 was ready for.
Cool. Guys, let's move into the next game then. We had the G's, ALG versus NRG. 3-1 in the end for NRG, with ALG taking a surprising game off them. A lot of people did not expect this at all. And to be honest, Allegiance, they looked, I thought, superb in this series against, the runners-up from last season, NRG. Mayday, how did you think Allegiance did? Are they looking like a top 6 team in NA?
They did really well. They shut energy down when they needed to, and they were really good on the offense for once as well, which was surprising enough. I don't think it was the fact that everyone was surprised ALG took a game off them. It was more so just they were surprised that it was by more than one goal. Because, like, game 1 and game 3 could have easily gone either way, like both of them going into overtime. But, yeah, Allegiance definitely looking like a top 6 team. Like, they could definitely hold their place above Rogue and FlyQuest at the minimum.
Absolutely. And just coming on to that then, Redeyes, were they playing against a good NRG team? Did NRG feel like they weren't as good as they were last season? I know we're at the start of the season. It's difficult for us to go out there and say, okay, NRG are just warming up, but I don't feel like, from what I've seen so far, that this is the same monster as we saw last season. What do you think so far?
I think it's a case of energy. Like they've got to live up to that last season now, and I think they're just having a wee bit of a bumpy start. It's because like everyone's expecting them to be the Dignitas of NA now, and I think they're just sort of struggling to keep up with that sort of podium that people have put them on. So I think they definitely didn't play as well as well. They obviously didn't play as well as they normally can, but I think it is just a case of everyone's expecting them to do really well, and maybe the pressure that's just getting them to them a little bit.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, no, good point there in that regard as well. For me, I felt like Justin played really well in this series. He set the bar really high for the NRG team. He made a lot of crucial touches and a lot of crucial goals, and yeah, that was really important there for NRG to get that win. Of course, you don't want to lose a second game to a team like Allegiance, otherwise question marks I think start to be asked about you. But a convincing win in the end from NRG. Their defense really putting them through into the next game. But guys, the game number 3 of week 2 in NA was FlyQuest versus G2. Now, I never felt like FlyQuest were in this game, to be honest. I felt like every chance they really had that was a serious chance. I felt like it was because of G2 lapse in concentration. Generally between a Rizzo and Kronovi kind of a play rather than a JNF's. JNF's had a phenomenal series for once, for the first time in a while. Mayday, coming to you first. Are FlyQuest in big trouble?
100%, like 0-3 2 weeks in. Like you're just going to be barely scraping out of the bottom 2, if at all, when everyone else, like even Rogue, is only 0-2, and next week Rogue have a tough game, but then like if you're going 0-3 in the first 2 weeks, you're more than likely going to go into the promotion playoffs.
Okay, and just on that as well, Redeyes, are FlyQuest good enough for RLCS?
I think they're good enough for RLCS. I think they've just had a bit of a rough going of it so far, especially since G2 starting to look like that. Like this is the team that can beat NRG, can beat C9, and it looks like they're playing a lot more consistently. I'd say this is G2's most consistent season so far. And I think it's going to be really hard for like FlyQuest, ALG, Rogue, all them. It's going to be really tough for them to beat G2, because I'd say a couple of seasons you could have said, these lower teams, they could take a couple of games off each other, and then they could maybe squeeze one off G2 if, depending on how they play on the day. But it looks like G2's really, they're just looking way better than they ever have.
Sure. Okay, well, Mayday, Redeyes took my point that I was going to ask you next on warming up, and they're playing really well. I want to bring a point then back to FlyQuest. They conceded 14 goals in 4 games, which is more than 3 goals a game, 3.5 goals a game. That's a lot of goals to be letting up. Is that the type of form that you personally think will see them somehow manage a top 6? Because that's a lot of goals to be letting up a game.
No, not at all. If they keep going the way they're going with that overly aggressive style against the big teams like that punish heavily for that playstyle, they're going to get 0-7 probably, if not maybe 1-7 against one of the smaller teams like Rogue. But like they have to shore up that defense before they can even start thinking about top 6.
Okay, cool. Guys, next series up was Rogue versus Ghost. I mentioned it to you two last week that I felt like this was going to be the series of drama. The gameplay actually wasn't that bad. The gameplay was really good, I thought, compared to the other game in EU of similar standing, which was Vitality and Fnatic. We'll get onto that later. Firstly, Redeyes, we'll actually come to you with this one. A reverse sweep for Ghost. They were 2-0 down. Rogue took the first 2 games, and they took them pretty well. Just 1-0 games here or there. But Ghost, fair play to them, they came back and they reverse swept them. I made a point here. They showed character. It was a big moment for Ghost. They needed to get that win. Did you think the same?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Rogue came out strong here. Ghost wasn't expecting it. That really gave Ghost a really good opportunity to prove that even when they're 2 down, they're still a capable team and can really keep the mental game intact. So I think they showed up big with that series.
Mayday, we obviously talked about how terrible Rogue were last week in terms of just their defense and their lack of offense, the lack of creativity, and just the lack of midfield pressure. I thought Sizz and Joro did okay in this series, to be honest, especially in the first two games. Sizz in particular did really, really well, I thought. He was kind of the guy kind of setting up the plays in offense and the one scoring them. How did you think those two did in particular?
Compared to last week, they were leaps and bounds ahead of where they were. Like Sizz really, really surprised me with how well that he was playing. Like he was still, there was obviously still mistakes being made, otherwise you wouldn't get reverse swept. But it's a serious improvement, and if they can keep working on it and keep getting better, they should manage to just maybe snake out a relegation, depending on how Allegiance play.
Absolutely. Okay. And then Redeyes, coming to you with my final point here. Now, for the guys who are watching the stream, you will see a stats that I've taken, of course, from octane.gg. So all credit to those guys, of course, which I put down in the bottom right corner as well. Jacob had, I think, one of the worst series I have ever seen from any player in RLCS. He had no goals, he had no assists. So he did absolutely nothing on the offensive side for his team. No goals, no assists in 5 games, not just 3 games like they were swept or something like that. In 5 games, he had no goals. Redeyes, I don't want to point at Jacob. And Zayn, to a certain extent, was kind of absent as well, but at least he had 2 assists, I believe, instead of, none. Like, is Jacob RLCS level at this stage? I mean, he's just, that's 2 weeks in a row, he's done absolutely nothing.
I mean, I still think Jacob's RLCS level. I think he's just... It's hard going from one of the top teams, Energy, and then going to Rogue and then having such a rough start. So I think he's probably struggling with some motivation for the team right now. I think Jacob's also one of those players that's like either he is going to be putting the team on his back or he's just going to not really show up. And I think he just had one of those days where he's not really showing up and he just had a bad day. So I think he's just, it's just one of them days. Just everyone's got them, and today was Jacob's.
Conversely, though, to your point, Redeyes, like he's been in that team now. This is his 2nd season in that. Is that 2nd season, 3rd season in that Rogue team? Second season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, surely there should be a little bit of motivation. I mean, he's getting paid money now that he's with an org, and obviously they might be getting a cut of the prize pool as well. I'm not sure what kind of money Rogue are on, but like the guy surely has a bit of motivation to keep going. And also, I mean, he's been in this team now. It's his 2nd season. Sure, he's playing with Joro as opposed to Insol. But he's been with Sizz. Surely he can do better than this. Like, these are really poor figures to be putting on the board.
Oh yeah, you definitely expect someone who's just come from the Energy roster, even if they'd never done spectacular at LAN with Jacob on their roster, but they were always the top, like arguably top NA team. So it is gonna be hard for him going down to a lower roster, especially now that they do have to play with Joro, which I'm sure is not his first pick there. But again, I just think he's just too inconsistent to really carry a team, and I think Jacob is easily the best player on that team on his day. So I think it's just a mess of different things that could really be going wrong for him.
Just a question: you were saying that you didn't think it was his first pick. You don't think it was Rogue's first pick, or Jacob's first pick, or Joro's first pick? Who's
the whole team? Like, I don't think it was their like pick to have Joro. I think there's a lot of other players they would rather have. Like, I'm sure they would rather have Insol, but just the way he was before. Like, I remember hearing about some drama with him. So they definitely rather have him than Joro, I'd imagine, if they had that option.
Absolutely. Right, boys. Last series then, Cloud9 versus EG. I can't remember if all of us predicted a sweep here or not. In terms of this series, but it was a massive series for Cloud9. Now the games were pretty close. I mean, Evil Geniuses got completely swept Mayday. In series 3-0, but they scored 6 goals, so Cloud9 still let up goals in the series games, but they scored 10. I guess in terms of this series, do EG need a better third? Now, the reason why I asked this, again looking at this information on octane.gg, Corrupted G scored less than 200 points per game. That's worse than what Jacob managed in 5 games. Okay, he had no goals as well, 0 goal participation as well. Sure, now he had good assist figures, but like, when you look at Chicago's figures in particular, which were phenomenal, Chicago had a fantastic series. Like, if Evil Geniuses really want to make it a top 4 rather than a top 3, do they need to change it maybe next season, or is it too early to say?
I'd reckon it's a bit too early to say, because like if you look at last season, Gabe was second highest or third highest striker in NA, and now he's on a team where rather than it having to rely on Classics being the assister and Gabe scoring with Chrome sitting back, they have freedom to move around and swap positions and change it up during the game. And I think he's just adjusting to that.
Mm.
So he's adjusting to taking up different positions rather than just being the striker. And it's going to take him a while to get used to it. But I reckon after maybe a couple more weeks, a bit more training together, he'll start popping off again.
Cool. Okay. Redeyes point I have here, one of the last points. Squishy, consistently the best North American player now.
Yeah, I'd say he's giving Fireburner a run for his money when it comes to consistently. I'd say just Squishy has more of a chance to show off just how consistent he is because he's a very offensive-minded player, whereas I'd say Fireburner's more of a sort of, middle of the pitch, maybe a bit defensive. So, yeah, I'd agree. I would agree with that point, though. Squishy is looking really good this season.
How scary is this Cloud9 team, Mayday?
On their day, absolutely terrifying. Dig would be scared of them if when they're playing this well going into even like RLCS.
But I guess Redeyes Gimmick had an off day, but he can get away with that in this team, can't he?
Oh yeah, when you've got, well, like you said, that consistent player Squishy, and you've got that offensive monster of Torment, like you can afford to have an off day when you're the attacker, like, because if the other team can't score, then you're gonna get a chance eventually.
Absolutely. Right, guys. Normally we'd actually go into the power rankings at this stage, which I brought up on screen there momentarily. What we'll do for now is we'll actually go on to the EU matches instead of going through the power rankings. We'll come to them later because I have them on the one image, so I'll show you the EU and NA ones all together. And we'll obviously keep questions for the end, guys, so if you're still here and you still have questions to ask, we'll go through those at the end. Right, guys, next one coming up. Flipside Tactics versus PSG Esports. Mayday, we'll come to you first in this. This was, I felt, surprisingly one-sided. The performance of Cookser was sensational, I think is the best word to describe him. He was absolutely marvellous on the offense and the defense. He's the most saves per game, the same assists per game as everyone else, and the most saves per game by like a mile. Can Flipside get away with this sometimes? Because like Cookser played an unbelievable game. Like I can't really I'm not really sure what to talk about with this game because it was just him versus PSG. I felt he was so good.
Cooks did have an unbelievable series. Like that looked reminiscent of the old season 2 Cooks carrying Markey with Greasy assisting him. But like I don't think it was just him against PSG. Like it didn't feel like that. It felt like the majority of the time it was Yukio and Cooks creating the chances. Whether Mystic or Yukio got the assist, it was Yukio who played the ball that got the play. Like Cooks is great at finishing and he's great at saving and he had his 0.67 assists per game, same as the rest of them. But like I don't think that he outright carried them. But I think Yukio and Mystic are really, really good at setting up Cooks for shots. So it's helping him out quite a bit. They seem to have shored up from last week anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question though as well. I mean, like, okay, they're playing a PSG team who I don't think has quite the offensive firepower that Weedham Girls have with an ignite and out-and-out kind of striker as he's known. But Redeyes, this is kind of a weird question to ask considering what happens later on in the day for PSG. But what do they have to do to clean up these weaknesses against a team like Flipside who just basically open space and punish you for leaving open spaces, particularly in that kind of final third of the field?
Honestly, I'm not really too sure, just because I just don't think the PSG roster right now is really capable of keeping up. I think if they're all having a good day, they can all individually create opportunities and chances that the rest can pick up on. But I don't really see PSG as a team in the same sense that you would see like Dignitas as a team, because the likes of Dignitas, they're always passing, they're always doing all these crazy team plays, and I see PSG as just each player is just trying to do solo plays, and then if a goal happens from that, then great. I don't know. I don't have PSG as a very high standard anymore. I think ever since they lost Bluey, they've lost their offensive, and I think their attack is all they really had.
Sure. Okay, cool. Well, look, we'll come to that point later because that's a very harsh point, considering their other game. But in this game, I would 100% agree with you. After they lost here, got swept. After especially I predicted them to win. even though I'm basically like the Gibbs with predictions these days. I felt like this could be the end for PSG, but they turned it around later on in the day. But we'll come to that shortly. Mayday, coming to you next. Weedham Girls versus Complexity. Now, I can't remember who predicted what out of all of us guys, to be honest.
We all predicted Complexity to win, but I was the only one that said I wanted Weedham Girls to win.
Okay. This was a disaster class from Magnus and a lot. I thought they were like, I've never seen Magnus since season 3 when he was under, well, basically the old whatever the team was, Resonant Esports. I believe back in season 3 when they came 6th or 7th. I think it was 6th that season. They didn't play very well that season. But pretty much since season 4, in every RLCS game, Magnus has been the consistent man in the EU. He's always been good. Never been like, he's had amazing games, but he's never been bad. This was the first time he's played bad. Mayday, you've mentioned before that what you think about a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about him again after this. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on Magnus and a lot in those games, they were absolutely terrible. Like, Magnus, in my head, has always been in contention for top 3 or top 4 players in the world because he's always had that level that he's kept. Like, that's his minimum. His minimum is other people's, like, middle ground. But for whatever reason, during the weekend, he just dropped. He looked like he did not belong on that pitch half the time. He had a couple of good assists with Greasy getting the shots in, but, like, most of the time he just didn't know where to be. And I think it was mainly because a lot was coming in behind him and screwing up the rotations a lot. And it was messing with Magnus's head, so it didn't give him the confidence that he usually has, which is a problem with the new rosters coming in every year. It's like Magnus and a lot have had that like stability for the last 3 seasons with Metza Norris in there. So it's obviously going to take them time to adapt. I thought after last week, they'd taken the month off before RLCS and they'd worked on everything, but apparently they haven't. They still have a few things they need to get right.
Redeyes, before I come to you, thanks so much, RL Aftershock, for raiding us with a party of 13 guys. I hope you enjoy the podcast at this moment in time. We're about halfway through. You've missed the North American region, but considering most of you guys are probably European, you don't care about that anyway. You probably want to listen.
And I 1, 2, 3.
Exactly. Redeyes, Weedham Girls in this season, in this series, they were really good, but the question I want to bring to you, Metza Norris, obviously coming from Complexity over to Weedham Girls, is he bringing out the best in Ignite and Remco, or was this just Ignite being fantastic on the offense? How did you feel this series went for Weedham Girls?
I feel it's a case of Weedham Girls knows how to shut down Complexity, especially with Metza obviously now just joining them and previously being on Complexity. I think it's this series specifically, like overall, I would say Metza does really help to bring out the best in especially Ignite. So I think because Ignite can rely on that like consistent and reliable middle player that Metza is, it allows him to really bring out that striker role, like you said, he likes to play. Mm-hmm. But I think in this series specifically, not just because Magnus and Lot were having a poor series, but I think they just really do know how to shut down Complexity. I remember hearing about them. Commentator saying that all they did was just let Complexity use all their boost, play safe, and once they're out of boost, you're at a big advantage against them then. And honestly, after I heard that, I was like, yeah, I could see that. So I think it's just a counter story here with Weedham Girls and Complexity.
Wait, are you trying to make out a point that a colorcaster on RLCS level actually knows what they're talking about?
I think a couple of good points were in there, for once.
Great. Okay, guys, I think there's enough said about that series. It was pretty straightforward. Weedham Girls taking them down 7-2, and I believe the only 2 goals are both scored by Greasy Meister, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure, but they were both off of just mistakes from Weedham Girls rather than Complexity really outplaying them. Whereas Complexity on the offense Weedham Girls on the offense played really, really well. The next series, however, Mouse Sports versus Team Dignitas, which we know Dignitas took down 3-1. Now, obviously, it's easy for us to speak all day about Mouse, and I will come to them, but Mayday, coming to you, Dignitas, they showed maybe, I'm not sure if it was nerves, maybe not quite taking Mouse as seriously as they should have, or maybe they were just caught off guard by the absolute speed and raw pace of this Mouse team. What were your thoughts? Are Dignitas still just on another level? Because they were obviously able to accelerate going into game 3 and 4, but what were your thoughts on that?
I think Dig are still on another level compared to most teams, but like Mouse Sports is showing the other teams aren't that far off anymore. Like the last 2 seasons, Dignitas has had free run for most of it. Like the teams are barely able to scratch them, and this team coming up from RLRS just shoves in their face, plays their own game against Dig, and very very easily could have come out with a 3-1, a 3-1 or a 3-2 win because like those two overtimes were so close. Like
And so long as well. One of them was very long, wasn't it? 7 minutes or something like that. It
yeah, it
was, it
was
was ages. Yeah.
ridiculous.
I mean, Red Eyes. I was extremely impressed by Mouse, and honestly, I think they're in my top two, top three teams right now. I think they were absolutely phenomenal. And Mayday mentioned last week about how good Skyline was, and I felt like he was really, really solid on the defense, but also really good on the offense, picking up chances and also creating a couple of chances as well, putting a lot of shots on net. Where do you feel like this Mouse Sports team stacks up? Are they definitely top six? Are they close to top two? How impressive were you, or how impressed were you by them?
Mouse has really come out of nowhere for me. I really wasn't expecting much of them going into this. I thought they were going to be very easily that team that was going to go, maybe they'll win one series or something. But they've proven that they can hang with even Dignitas. Like that first game, convincing. That second game, honestly, I feel like they should have won. I think the nerves got them a bit on that because what were they up 2-0? I
Yep.
think with not long left in the game, and then I think they kind of let that slip, and Dignitas obviously came back into that one 3-2. But yeah, I think Mouse can. So what I think's happened here is Mouse is a top tier team, and Dignitas is used to. Well, for a few seasons now, they've been playing against the top teams,
Mm-hmm.
and now this new top team has come out of nowhere, and it's really showing that like whatever way Mouse does things, it's thrown off Dignitas. And I think if Mouse can be more consistent, I think they could have taken this series off Dig for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they were really impressive. They were 2 goals up in both game two and game four, if I remember correctly. So that's a very good point. They could have taken game two. They could have taken game four. Honestly, I felt like the only game where Dignitas were actually better was game three, which they won 2-0 by actually shutting out Mouse in that game as well. Made a final point on Dignitas. K-Dop is ruthless up front. And when you've got guys like Turbo and Violent Panda putting him through, it's just the same old story with them, isn't it? They're just so good going forward.
K-Dop is still probably, in most people's opinions, probably the best finisher in the world. But like against a team like Mouse, where most of the time Mouse were pushed up into Dignitas' half, and K-Dop had a couple of chances that he could have taken that he's missing, and he shouldn't really be missing. Like it was a bit of an odd game for him, but he still got it. Hopefully he'll work on it a bit more and show people that he actually can be out and out the best striker in the world.
Final question: is he better than Fuser?
Yes. Sorry, Future.
Okay, next
Someday,
game.
Future. Someday you will be that good.
Next game up then, guys, was the other game, which I said to you too. Let's watch out for this game. This is the other big game in Europe. Sorry, in RLCS, the one in Europe as opposed to the one in NA. Fnatic versus Vitality. Now, honestly, I mean, these guys, this was just chaotic series. Unlike the Ghost versus Rogue series, which I actually thought was a really good series with not too many mistakes, I felt like this series was horrendous for the amount of mistakes being made by this team Vitality. I think they might want to go back and actually watch their coach Gregan's videos on YouTube on how to rotate and how to position themselves, because my god, they were absolutely horrendous. And I don't want to dig too much into these guys. Yeah, they're obviously phenomenal players, and they'd wipe all of us off the park, and in a twos or threes or a ones game or
Some
whatever.
of us.
Maybe. Well, some of us. Red Eyes might be able to do something. You might be able to do something. They'd probably wipe me off the park. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here doing all the talking. But like, this was a huge win for Fnatic. They were 2-0 up. Vitality brought it back. They really shouldn't have brought it back, by the way. Fnatic should have beaten them in game 3, I think it was. And then for Fnatic to just pull it out in game 5 to win 3-2. Big win for them, Mayday. But I didn't mention it in our little script beforehand. Pashi had an open net. It was 1-0 up, Fnatic were, in game 5. Pashi had an open net to score. He hit the post, and the ball bounces out to Maestro, who puts the ball into the net on the other side of the field, changing it from what should have been a 1-1 to a 2-0. It was a huge win for Fnatic, but, like, how bad were Vitality? Like,
compared to what they can be, absolutely horrendous. Like they're genuinely looking like promotion playoff candidates right now, and that team with those players should not be anywhere near there. Like they should be fighting for top two, top three, not bottom two. Like Pashi had mostly all right games. Scrub was probably
It was decent.
was definitely the best on the Vitality team for the series. What the hell is going on with Fairy Peak? He has just been like, that's 2 weeks in a row. That's probably the first time since he became a pro that we've seen Fairy Peak like worse than both of his teammates in 2 weeks. Like it's so weird. Even last week we were saying there's no way in hell Fairy Peak has that bad a week again, and yet he's managed to prove us wrong and do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you're gonna have to remind me now. Is head-to-head the decider? Or is it win percentage? Remind me.
Win percentage.
Win percentage. Okay, good.
If the win percentage is the same, then it's head to head.
Then it's head-to-head, right? So that could be a big series yet. That could really be a big series yet for Fnatic to take that over Vitality. This could be 6 or 7. They could be fighting over. Who knows what this could be? I know you just made a point there, and I'm going to bring it to you, Redeyes, next. Mayday made a point there. This Vitality team should be doing a lot better. But this is the second time we've seen another terrible performance from a team that really should be doing better. Now, I was a little bit critical of Scrub last week. He was getting a lot of plaudits when I felt like he didn't play particularly well. I actually felt like Scrub played pretty well in this series. He was very good on defense. His teammates overextended. They've left him alone. They left him exposed on the defense. A lot of the time, Scrub was still able to pull out some really good saves. As you can see, guys who were there watching with his stats on screen, over 2 saves a game, where his teammates were barely able to manage 1 save per game. Redeyes, my question is, like, Very had a terrible performance. Mayday is right, and he had it again. Like, do you feel like this Vitality team are actually playing below par, or is this actually what they're playing like? Because for me, it doesn't happen twice in a row without a very good reason.
It's hard to watch them play like this. It's the thing that makes it, I think, most blatant about how bad they're playing right now is that was it the Coliseum where they played against Dignitas, and I know they had Jeezer on as a sub, and they had that, like, what was it, 15-18 minute overtime. Like, they looked like you know, that Dignitas killer that they were sort of being rumored to be before they showed up. They looked like that team then. They looked really good. I guess the honeymoon phase for their team just didn't last longer than 1 series. I don't know. It's hard to watch.
Well, Fnatic had a similar story. I mean, they took down Vitality as well, didn't they? I mean, like, Redeyes, Mummy Snow, I felt like, and Maestro as well. I thought they were epic in this series.
Maestro had a really good series. Maestro was showing us why he's the best player on Fnatic.
I honestly thought, though, Mummy Snow played really well as well on the offensive side. I mean, he created a lot. And that's not taking anything away from Snasky. He played quite well on the offense as well, but he made a lot of mistakes on defense, which allowed Vitality to come back into it. But I felt like that Mummy Snow was creating a lot of chances on the offensive side. Now, guys, I know you can see the stats on screen. Mummy Snow is the lowest on the board. Maestro's on over 400 points per game on average. Mummy's on 284, but Mummy had the most assists, 1.4 assists per game. This is Violent Panda stats we're talking about. Were you impressed by him, or was it just a Maestro show?
Oh, I think it was definitely the Mummy Snow and Maestro show. But, you know, I would just give more credit to Maestro, just because I'm sure he's been wanting to show everyone, like, that's the sort of stuff he can do. And I think this is the first season, or the first series in a while that he's really been able to show it. And I think Mummy Snow is a big part of why he's being able to show it. I think those two are coming into their own as being a real duo. Mm-hmm. And then Snasky just appears to be, you know, just kind of doing his own thing as the third man.
Absolutely. I mean, to back up your point there, the last time Maestro played this well, I think, was against Dignitas last season. When they were Gale Force back then, I think it was. Do you remember that series? Or I think they brought it to 5 games as Fnatic last season, and Maestro had like 5 saves a game, or 5 saves on average per game, I think it was, or something ridiculous like that. He was absolutely nuts last season against them. Mm-hmm. But Mayday, final point. What do Vitality have to do to change this up?
In all honesty, like, the main thing that I'm noticing when I'm playing the games is they always double commit on defense and offense. And for whatever reason, they cannot actually form a proper attack without exposing the last man really, really badly. And that's just like, they've got to calm a bit better, let each other know what they're trying to do. And if it doesn't work out, they've got a position to actually be safe. It's like if they're losing 3-2 to Fnatic, and Maestro had an unbelievable game, but like they're not one of the stronger teams in the league, and if Vitality want to be beating the stronger teams in the league, they're gonna have to make sure that they play safe while also playing well.
And Redeyes, I actually want to bring a final question to you then. Considering this is the weakest team in the league, Fnatic, well, weakest team before now. I think Vitality take that over, in my opinion. I'm not sure about you guys. Do you think Vitality are in big trouble going up against all the other teams? I mean, these were expected to be the giant killers, as you both mentioned, against the Dignitases and stuff, but I think they could be swept aside in a lot of these other series now. Do you feel the same?
It's hard to say yes, I agree with you, but I do. And it's annoying to say that because of how good Vitality should be. But, I mean, after last week, it was easy enough for me to be like, oh, it's just an off week, they'll pull it back. But now it's just, I don't know, like, they should not have lost to Fnatic of all the teams that they are going to lose to. That should not be one of them. They shouldn't have even won those 2 games. Even that feels like, too much for how they were playing. I mean, it could be a case of maybe they're just going to be one of those teams that's better against Dignitas and all those bigger teams. Maybe they'll play them and play out of their minds and beat them, and maybe they just struggle against some of the sort of smaller teams.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't see them doing very well this season unless they do a complete 180 and come out of the gate swinging with every season.
Well, every week. Next week they have probably the next weakest team in the league to play, PSG, or what most people believe is probably the 6th best team in the league right now. But they're also playing Complexity, who most people think are around that kind of 4th, 5th spot as well. So they have a chance. It's not over yet, but it's looking bleak. Final game I want to talk about, guys, obviously, is the Weedham Girls versus PSG. Now, Axel Toss, I'd like to bring this up, for the first time ever made a 100% commitment when making a prediction after being pressured on the desk. Because you know the way he's always like, I want to go for this team, but this team also could do really well, etc. And that was the whole meme in the chat, and it was absolutely hilarious. So he voted for Weedham Girls to 3-0 PSG. He may have cursed them because Mayday PSG played really well in this series. Shawset finally showed up for the first time since probably Season 3, Season 4. Probably DreamHack even at the start of the year. And Fruity also played really well, whereas Weedham Girls were pretty exposed on the defense. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's kind of funny how all of the Complexity / former Complexity players like the Mets, Magnus, and Alot have all had really bad series this week. It's as if they're like linked together somehow. But like Metza just could not do anything in those games. Shawset was cutting down every single chance that Weedham Girls even started to form. Fruity was finishing every chance he got, and for once, Farah actually looked like an RLCS level player. He was getting the ball where it needed to be and getting the goals where needed. He's still like shaky on defense, but he's coming back into his own. And I think if PSG can keep playing like this, they're going to be a serious contender for maybe even scraping the top 4, maybe 3rd if they can. It'll be a tough one for them, but they could definitely do it if they keep improving like this. Yep,
I agree. Redeyes are going to come to you because you are the PSG critic. Like Mayday is the CIS critic. You are very vocal about what you feel like for PSG, but they managed to get a win here against all odds. I don't think anyone predicted really PSG to win here. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this series?
Well, obviously, given that first series, it really didn't look like PSG had any right win in this game. But I think just PSG's play style with how fast they are, I think it really just had to have thrown off Weedham Girls. Shawset especially, you mentioned he was just having a really good series, and he is very annoying to play against when he is playing well. So I can imagine the frustration that Weedham Girls would have had if he was playing well. Just every challenge, he would have been there for it, and he'd probably be winning it. And I think it just really didn't. Like, I think Weedham Girls is a very deliberate team. They're not happy enough just to, boom it upfield and let whatever happen, see if they get an opportunity out of it. I think they quite like, deliberate passing from player to player and stuff. I think it's a bit of a slower style, and I think PSG just was more than happy with just jumping all over that style and just shutting it down at every opportunity. I think that really played out for them well.
I feel like Weedham girls play out from the back a lot. Not necessarily a slow game, but they just bang it up the field and play out from the back. I felt like they weren't allowed to get the ball out of their own half, Mayday. PSG did a really good job of shutting them down, particularly with Fruity, who me and you both, enjoy a lot as a player, and he had a very good series here. Not as good as Shaw said, of course, but he still had a very good series. What were your thoughts on him? Has he finally shown flashes in this series to show that, yes, I am an RLCS caliber player?
I think even last week he was showing that he is RLCS level, but I think it's more so PSG's team as a whole showing we can win games against big teams. We can do well in RLCS. It's like we're not going to be playoff relegation area, but it's not more so Fruity showing off. It's more so the team coming together and actually, for once, playing like the team that they can be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, final point then. You mentioned Redeyes that you felt like PSG were just playing faster. What do Redem girls need to change? I mean, like, honestly, I know what kind of person Remco is from having spoken to him in real life. He comes across as a very... Actually, do you know who he would have been? He obviously would have enjoyed playing with Turbo because they're very similar characters. They aren't 100%, I would say, professional. They're very... Yeah, we expect to win this game. And I reckon...
Slightly arrogant.
Yeah, I would say more than slightly in Remco's case. He's an extremely arrogant individual. Not necessarily a bad thing. You need to be as a high-level player, but he's a bit too arrogant sometimes. And I felt like he went into this game expecting a win, and that could have rubbed off on all three of the guys rather, both Ignite and Metza. What did he need? What went wrong here, Redeyes, for these guys? What kind of change?
Well, given that, it's probably safe to assume after seeing PSG's earlier series that they probably went in thinking, oh, well, we'll just 3-0 them too, you know? Like, if Flipside can 3-0 them, well, we beat Flipside, so we'll beat these guys. So maybe it was a case of that, and then PSG just came out the gate so strong that Weedham girls really just couldn't recover from that. I think just picking up the pace a little bit, like just not letting PSG challenge when they want to challenge, I think would be a big part of it. But yeah, I think speed. I think speed is mainly going to be the big difference here between PSG and Weedham girls. I think they just need to speed up.
Okay, cool. We'll obviously be doing a preview stream, guys. Later on in the week, of course, going into the game, so we won't talk about them now as we have them on screen here right now. I'll just show you our Twitter handles. You can follow me at nwrong_Mayday RL and Redeyes NI123. But the last thing we want to go through, guys, is our power rankings, and we will explain each one. Now, I'm going to be, the person who lets the boys speak first. In this case, so let's go through North America first. Mayday, we have your picks up here on screen for everyone to see right now. If you'd like to tell us the order and why you chose these guys.
Well, Dig is first because it's Dignitas. Like, they're two-time world champions for a reason. They're the strongest team in EU right now. Like, there's no point in putting anybody else up there because there's nobody else that has looked as consistent or as good as them up to this point. I put Mouse in second because I know they just lost to Dignitas, but they're the only team that I've seen in quite a while actually like push Dignitas to their limits and make them have to try extremely hard just to get a win off them. Like, and Weedham grows in third because like they've just been, bar the PSG game, they've been consistent against top teams. They've been doing well. It looks like it's going to be like third or fourth finish for them. Mm-hmm. Fourth is Complexity because bar this week having an absolute mare, I'd say they'll get back into it and they're definitely looking stronger than everybody else on the list below them. Flipside in fifth because even though Cuxer had an amazing game, there's no way that player can do that every week against all the teams. Like, teams are going to see that and shut him down, and they're not going to be able to play as well as that. And like, that's why they're in fifth, because they're not going to be able to stay in that position of just winning games constantly because of one player. Mm-hmm. PSG's sixth because they're shaky starts. Like, they're looking a lot better after that We Them Girls game, but unless they can keep improving it, they're going to be going maybe sixth, seventh. Fnatic in seventh because they had a good series against Vitality. One they should have closed out a lot earlier, they showed why they could possibly get maybe fifth or sixth position, but I'm still not convinced because I've seen, like after that Dignitas game in the first week, like they still look extremely weak against strong teams. Then Vitality lost because like Owen was it 0-2 or 0-3 for 0-2 first 2 weeks for a team as strong as Vitality or a team that they should be as strong as like they should be up there with Dignitas and Mouse, and then they've gone 0-2. Like there's the only reason for them being eighth.
Hmm. Fair enough. Redeyes, you go through EU as well, so for us, take us through your top 8. Pretty similar to Mayday's, but give us your thoughts on them.
Yeah, well, Dignitas number 1 doesn't surprise anyone. Um, whenever it comes to second and third, I have Weedham Girls as second and Mouse as third. The only reason I have Weedham Girls as second is because they just have a lot more experience as a team playing at this level, and I feel like with Metza, I think they have a lot more potential than Mouse has. Like I know Mouse is this new team and they're doing really well, but eventually that underestimation that other teams have of them is going to wear off, and everyone's going to start seeing them as a real threat and start taking them seriously. So, I mean, if Mouse can keep up this, then I would happily put them as 2. But just for future, I would keep it the way it is. Flip side, I've got as number 4, just because if they can play the way they did, or even close to that, I would say they stand a chance of making top 4, easily top 6.
Mm-hmm.
If Cooks can keep up this, I mean, they'll easily make LAN, but it'll depend on the rest of the team as well to sort of make up for it when on the days that he can't. Complexity I have as number 5, just because this week wasn't great for them, and I feel like their play style might be becoming a bit predictable. I feel like they're a bit of a one-trick, go fast, redirect ball, and there's not really a lot to it. I feel like teams are going to start, especially with Greasy now, like everyone knows Greasy's thing is to go as fast as possible. So I feel like Complexity might be easy enough to shut down after a while if teams get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
PSG, honestly, the 6th and 7th position again, you could choose them around. Vitality and PSG just not looking too good. PSG looking a bit better though, so that's why I got them there. And I still have Vitality over Fnatic just because of the potential they should have. But again, Vitality could easily go down to 8th given how next week goes.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, I've chosen Dignitas, number 1. World champions, best team in Europe by quite some distance, best team in the world by quite some distance. I've given Mouse spot position number 2, and for me, actually wasn't really too much of a thought here behind this. I thought it was a pretty straightforward decision. I agree with Mayday, the point you made earlier on. I thought they were by far the best team to play against Dignitas in quite some time. Other than NRG, I'd say it's the best performance anyone has given against a Dignitas team that actually really tried and gave it everything they got. And Dignitas had to work extremely hard for that win against Mouse. And on another day, Mouse would have won that series. I've actually given Flipside position number 3. I think if they can get Yukio to be consistent, it doesn't matter what Mystic does, he can be absent. The Cookser Yukio duo going forward is absolutely devastating. As we saw at points last season when they took down Dignitas, not only in Gnarly but also during league play in Season 5. When Cookser and Yukio are playing together with good chemistry and they know what each other is doing, I think they're absolutely outstanding together. Weedham Girls, number 4, I feel like they would have been number 2, but after PSG beat them, I'm not really sure if they got lucky with their wins or if they're really like a top 2 team. I'm not really sure where to rate them now after that. Complexity can't be ahead of Weedham Girls because Weedham Girls beat them so convincingly. I have question marks now over this Complexity team as well, a bit like you, Redeyes. I'm not convinced that they are a top 4 team anymore. I'm a little bit wary of their defense now. With Greasy Meister coming in to replace Metza, I think Metza was a much better defensive player than Greasy. Greasy is liable to make a lot of mistakes, as we saw in previous seasons. And PSG have given number 6. This was a tough one for me. I know they beat Weedham Girls, but I don't feel like that was a Weedham Girls team that was taking them seriously, as we mentioned already, for reasons that I know what Remco is like as a person. I felt like they just shaded it because they beat a better team, whereas Fnatic beat a really bad Vitality team. For me, there was no question of who was 8th. So I disagree with you, Redeyes. I think Vitality are by far the worst team in the league, and I mean by quite some distance. Fnatic didn't even have to play their best to beat Vitality, because I don't think they played their best. They could have trioed them, but they made mistakes. And I think Vitality have a lot of work to do to work on this so-called potential, because I feel like they're miles behind. Guys, let us know in the chat what you think, who your top 8 in EU. We're going to go to North America now, and this will be the second last part before we come to you guys for questions, and then we'll round off the stream. Mayday, tell us your top 8.
So, first is Cloud9. The major reason for why I put them over Energy is they've had a more consistent start to the season. And just before RLCS had started in the last tournament, I forget what it was called, but Cloud9 4-0'd NRG in the finals. And they have just looked as strong as can be since they've come back, bar Gimmick. That's because Gimmick's been a bit quiet. Energy in second because they're still fighting for the top position in NA, and it's only been the first 2 weeks. They could come back into their own, show what they showed last season, but the nerves might be getting the better of them. That's why they're in second. G2 in third, just because they've had such a good start to the season. They've been playing like a proper top tier team for the first time in a long time, and they've been actually consistently beating anyone that comes up against them. EG in fourth ahead of Ghost, mainly just because EG had beaten Ghost. I still think Ghost might be slightly better team against the big guys, but EG get that just because they beat them 3-2, was it? Yeah, 3-2. Then Ghost in fifth because they've shown little hints and sparks of what they can possibly be. They haven't shown their full potential yet, and their middle of the pack would be about where they are right now. Look, ALG in sixth just because bar was it the game against even the game against NRG, they still did really well against them. They seem to have embraced RLCS this time and actually come out swinging rather than the last time they were in RLCS. They're putting up fights against every single team that they're coming up against. FlyQuest in seventh because they haven't had the best results, but they've still shown in a couple of games in series that they are good enough to be there. They just need to get the consistency down. But because of the start, they're in seventh. Rogue in eighth because they've been absolutely abysmal. Like they can't ever get the whole team playing well together. It's either one person plays well or none of them do. Or even today, like Sizz during the weekend, Sizz played well, Joro played okay, and Jacob was god awful. They can't ever actually get to seem to play all on a similar level. If they do, they'll start playing a lot better, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Absolutely. Vert in the chat just saying it was a rival esports tournament was the one that Cloud9
Cloud9 4-0'd Energy.
Okay. Cool. No, I take those points. Redeyes, your top 8.
Right. So I still have Energy as number 1, just because I really don't think one shaky week for NRG should knock them from the first, especially since they didn't lose their series. They still won it. So they're still going flawless so far. And I don't know, I still think like last lands finals, it's hard not to look at that and be like, how is this team not the best in NA? Like by far. Like I know C9 on a really good day could give Energy a real run for their money. But I feel like if Energy or if C9's on a really good day and NRG's on a really good day, I feel like Energy just still squeezes that one out. C9 is second. That's a solid second. G2 is third. Again, a solid third. I think you could even make the argument for second, depending on how these upcoming weeks are going to be, whenever they finally get to, go against the likes of C9 and NRG, sort of show that, are they still the giant killers that they were in previous seasons. EG, I still have as number 4, even though this week's wasn't great for them. I think they just played against a C9 that was just ready for them. So I still think EG's got that top 4, if not top 6, for sure. 5 is Ghost. They could easily go into that 4th spot if they keep up playing how they were. Just get a bit more consistent, let them show up a bit more. ALG and FlyQuest, a bit interchangeable in the 6th and 7th, but I think ALG just sort of reaches that 6th spot before FlyQuest. FlyQuest, it's like Mayday said, they prove that they're RLCS level, just, I think they're struggling with a bit of consistency. So be good to see if they do that. And then 8th is Rogue, just because I think their results sort of speak for themselves on why they're 8th.
And
Perfect.
Sizz.
And Sizz played well
And
this
then
week, to be fair.
Sizz.
Okay, cool. Guys, my top 8 is as follows. I think top 2 is very easy to predict and call. Cloud9 slightly edged over me. Energy would have been ahead of for me after Cloud9 got ran really close by Ghost, and to be honest, Ghost should have beaten them. But Cloud9 managed to pull through in the end, which convinced me to go with them. But also Cloud9 absolutely dismantled Evil Geniuses, who I think are actually a good team. I think there's a huge gap between second and third. I don't think G2 are near the same level as the top 2. If I'm honest, I don't feel like Rizzo is a top player anymore. I just don't see it. So G2 are third only because Evil Geniuses got swept by Cloud9. Otherwise, I'd give EG that position over G2. To be honest, from 5th downwards, I don't think any of these teams are good enough for RLCS. They wouldn't be in EU's RLCS, that's for sure, and they'd barely be in EU's RLRS. ALG are 5th for me, just because if they can get Illusion to play well, and he hasn't played well the last 2 series against G2 or NRG, it's been Seabass and Tyler carrying. If they can get him playing well like he did against FlyQuest, that's a good team, but he hasn't played well. So they've got good potential there, and I feel like they're ahead. Ghost just below, because I just feel like Illusion have 3 really good players. I feel like Ghost just don't have a third good player. I don't feel like Zane Jackie's good enough for RLCS anymore. I think he'd get found out in Europe very quickly. Rogue 7th ahead of FlyQuest for me, because there are flashes of offensive potential in that Rogue team. I think they've been a little bit unlucky, been exposed with certain plays on the defense. The difference between Rogue and FlyQuest for me is FlyQuest get countered really fast. Rogue are just need to sort of rotational plays on the defense. Rogue just letting goals after a bit of defensive pressure. Whereas FlyQuest just get countered because FlyQuest are, I think, just very naive in the way they attack. And that's why I think FlyQuest will get relegated no problem this season, probably with Rogue. But unlike the other 2 guys, I'm going to be pretty critical. I think from 5th to 8th, they would not be in EU's top 8. I think even Vitality would beat those teams, to be honest, at this moment in time. So yeah, that's my top 8. Now guys, fire us the questions. Let me know if I'm being too harsh. Are the guys being too nice? Now's the time to ask what questions. We'll give you about 4 minutes, and if we don't get any, or if we don't get too many, we'll cut it there. But yeah, let us know what you think. Am I being too harsh? Redeyes, Mayday.
I mean,
Can never be too harsh.
I'm the one taking the piss out of Gimmick and Sizz. Look.
Yeah.
If anyone's being harsh today, it's me.
Well, Gimmick actually, I thought did he not play well in one series, the first one?
Oh yeah, he
against
did not.
Ghost?
He did, yeah. It was just after last week. I was taking the piss out of him.
Yeah. Well, Gimmick's a very hot and cold kind of player. But yeah, I'm not sure. I just don't think any of those teams are good enough. I think EG are actually much better than what Cloud9. I think Cloud9 just
Yeah, Cloud9 had their number that series,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think as well the Ghost series for Cloud9 was actually what they needed.
Something to sort of slap them in the face and say, hey, you can lose to these teams.
Absolutely. I just got them warmed up because they had to try so hard to beat Ghost, and they just squeaked it. And to be honest, they got counter-attack goals a lot of the time when Ghost just slightly exposed themselves, because I thought Ghost were a better team, but I'm not convinced any of those teams are good enough, to be honest. But yeah, if you put any of the top from 2nd to 8th in EU again in NA, they'd all stay up, I reckon. If there are any questions, guys, 2 minutes left. Otherwise, I will send these boys off for dinner. Well, Redeyes, what time do you have dinner at? Like 11 or something?
No, I had my dinner before this. Don't worry about it.
What?
Woke myself up nice and early today, you know.
Oh, did you? Cool. What's nice and early?
12.
12? Cool. Mayday, what was nice and early for you?
10 to 7.
10 to 7.
Yeah.
I think I was nearly still awake at that time.
As we get up for college.
Yeah, same. I went to bed about an hour before you got up.
I'm pretty sure I went to bed and I heard my housemate getting up. So, yeah.
Literally, that's the only reason I'm doing that is because I have to get up for college. Like, if I don't get up that early, I'm not going to get the bus in for the first lecture.
That's true. Got to keep up that college. Any questions, guys? Let us know. I know that there are still 10 of you guys watching.
I see you 10 people out there.
I know one of those is probably Mayday.
Oh, it's 8 now where they scared them off.
Oh no, we've scared them off. Damn it, they've dropped. They've dropped to 8. Yeah, that's okay. Oh, that's so funny. Ah, for God's sake.
I couldn't resist myself.
What is that emote?
I got gifted a sub to a channel, so now I use his emotes.
What the hell is that? That is a creepy looking face. Alright guys, 1 minute left. If there are no questions, we will cap it off here.
Why did you put Rogue above FlyQuest?
Because I feel like FlyQuest just expose themselves too much on defense. Like, honestly, I don't know. Like, I watched the series twice. So I watched it on Saturday and I watched it again today because I was doing nothing. And, like, Rogue got scored on because Ghost had to break them down over an extended period of time, which just means Rogue is, you know, either not rotating correctly or they're just respecting him too much going off for plays. Whereas FlyQuest just gets scored on the counter. And honestly, they did that twice now. Actually, they've done it against all the teams they've played against. Because if you remember, FlyQuest would go ahead of Allegiance and Allegiance would bounce back straight away because they get countered on, because FlyQuest would try and put on massive pressure. So I feel like FlyQuest, it's not something that's easy for them to fix because they've been doing it too much. Whereas Rogue's one, if they actually knuckle down and put a lot of time into it, I feel like they could fix it. If Jacob just made me stop being a bonehead.
He was good the first week, though. He was really, really creative the first week, which was... It was reminiscent of the old Jacob. Like, this
That's
week
true.
was an absolute abysmal show for him.
But
like,
the problem is, when you got a new guy coming into a team, I feel they need to be integrated into the team, allowed to push for the ball. And Joro wasn't allowed to push for the ball in week 1, and that's why they got absolutely destroyed and dismantled. Whereas this week he actually was. Now, okay, we might be being critical here of Jacob and saying he had a bad week, but maybe he was actually not just ball chasing as much. I saw one of the guys in chat saying that he was ball chasing a lot. But anyway, guys, right, 30 seconds.
I think it was Vert, wasn't he?
Yes, I think it was Vert, yeah. So, I mean, personally, for me,
Oh,
I
no,
don't...
he said Sizz was ball chasing.
Yeah, Sizz was ball chasing. That's what I mean. So, for me personally, I just don't feel like FlyQuest are good enough defensively to stay up. I don't think Rogue are either, and as I said, I don't think any of those 4 teams from 5th to 8th are good enough. Maybe Ghost if they can get it together, but I think all of them are just too weak at the back. They've got no spine down the center of the team. They're just really weak in midfield, and they let up a ton of shots. So, I don't know if they were up against a complexity or if they were up against the flip side, for example, they would get absolutely taken away. So,
yeah, they probably would.
Right, guys.
I have a question for you.
Go on, go ahead. What's your question?
What's Redeye's Twitter handle?
Redeyes NI123. Go follow the man.
Thank you.
You can also follow us men at nwrong_ and at Mayday RL. Guys, thanks very much. A full video of this podcast, or full sound, whatever you want to call it, will be up on YouTube in about, I don't know, about an hour's time or so. Who knows how long this will take to upload. You can check out the podcast there. You can listen to it on the way to work. You can listen to it when your girlfriend is talking too loudly at you. Whatever you want to do with the podcast, that is entirely up to you. Give us a follow on Twitch. Help support the channel, of course. You're more than welcome to. And yeah, for now, we will see you probably either on Thursday or Friday with the preview of Week 3 with some spicy games in June. But thanks very much to Mayday and Redeyes for joining me. And we'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.